This is Art Talk with April, an artist podcast where we meet artists from all around the southeastern states and around the world. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art Talk with April. Today we have Casey Roberts. I just love what you're doing as far as, are you like, so you were talking about like shushing something. Do you start from scratch ever, or are you taking things and like changing them, like things that are already in existence?
I would say about an even split, like half and half for me, because a lot of people, like I'm really into denim. I love denim. It speaks a lot to me. It's like one of my favorite fabrics to work with. And so people give me a lot of jeans that like I've done it both ways where I'll like completely deconstruct them and piece them back together to be like a
Yeah.
jacket or something. But there's like another thing that I like to make is called wrap jeans, and it's just wrap pants, but it's just a pair of jeans that are split down the side seam, and then you have ties on either end of the top, like the waist, and you just tie it in the front, tie it in the back,
Yeah.
and they're big enough jeans, it makes it to where it's a very like liberating sizing option where a multitude of bodies can wear this one pair of jeans instead of it being this one fixed waist size. It can accommodate different waist size, and it has this very dramatic flow to it. It makes them look a little bit like bohemian more
Yeah.
than like they can already be. But like another thing is, people give me a lot of fabrics, or I have like sheets, pillowcases, curtains, tablecloths, and those are just great basis to like make anything you want, especially if you have like a lot of it. You can make, a big skirt. You can make, pants and a top, and maybe a jacket or a vest. And I've done all of those kinds of things, with there's a pair of harem pants that I just made that a friend of mine who lives in Berlin, he will bring me back just like a suitcase full of like trash he found in the street. And
Wow.
and it's usually like bed sheets and like fabric samples and curtains and so it's just like all this stuff. And I took these bed sheets, like these kids' bed sheets, and I just made this big, huge pair of drawstring pants that like, you can just cinch them in, and you can be like a size 52 or a size 2 and wear the same pair of pants, and they look very flowy. And
Wow.
I like working with things like with these found objects and pieces, and doing something totally new and different with,
Mhm.
or something that like, you would see a bed sheet and think you could only use it as a bed sheet, but it's basically just a bolt of fabric that you can do whatever you want with. But I definitely have done both. There's a lot in what I've been getting ready for a festival,
Mm.
and I've been making, as a result, a lot of clothes. And I would say about an even split of them are like stuff that are like made from like quilts, or made from whole pieces of fabric that I've turned into garments. And another half are, jeans I've deconstructed or made, or, made into something different, or like dresses split down the middle to be like vests, and or like open coats and stuff like that. It's just taking one step further of making an object that has one purpose into something that's more multi-purpose.
How do you like, how do you decide what you're going to do with something? Is it just like what you're inspired to create with it? Or are there certain things that you already know, okay, this would be really great for this, or, like a certain piece or whatever? How do you make
Right.
that decision?
It's very intuitive. I feel like it's kind of like picking up a piece a fabric and just like I'll just sit with it sometimes all day and just stare at it, touch it, feel. I recently watched a thing about the American designer Halston, and it talked about how he would take fabric
Mm,
and drape it on a mannequin
mm,
and like just stare at it for like 3 days, just like walk away, come back to it, watch it, and and then eventually it would be like, this is what I do with it.
mm.
And it's a lot like that because, from one day to the next, I don't know what I feel like doing. And so, and it's also a mix of like things that I see out in the wild, like or like things that I see in fashion magazines or on runways and stuff. I pay a lot of attention to what's going on in high fashion because it ultimately trickles down to, streetwear and fast fashion and all the things that people regularly consume. And so it gives an idea of like where things are going and what people are doing. And there's a ton of stuff right now that is taking extant pieces of clothing and turning them into something else. And it's been done before and again, but it's interesting to sit with a quilt or a pair of jeans or just a bunch of flower fabric and figure out, what can I make that isn't, the most obvious choice with this, because like if I see like a ton of flower, like different patchwork of like floral fabrics, I think, oh, a big flowy sundress, but what about a more sleek, suit, or like a duster or an apron or something like that? Um, Cargo shorts, could
Oh,
I could
I
I like
love it. Yeah,
and like turn into a skirt,
yeah.
it's something it's that kind of a thing where it's just like you never know what's going to jump out at you and present itself to you, and then some days you're just like hit over the head with this idea of what you want to do and seek that out until it's finished. So
That
it's
reminds me so much of like painting. Like I can imagine like I'm imagining like an artist that has like a canvas, a blank canvas. And sometimes you immediately know what you want to do with it, and sometimes you don't. And you've got to like think about it for a minute, like what do I really feel like making right now? And what am I inspired by? And then the idea of you're like paying attention to what they're doing in like high fashion and then
yeah.
trying to bring that into your own work, is that something that are you, I guess, like taking pieces of that and getting inspired by it and bringing it into yours, or are you attempting to like recreate pieces that others have
It's
designed? Like,
it's a little bit of both because I'll tell you right now on my I could drag it in here. I have a dress form that I have a pair of jeans pinned to right now because I was flipping through a Harper's Bazaar that a friend of mine gave me and saw this like Balenciaga denim top, and I was like, that just looks like a pair of jeans folded over. And it was. It's just that they're just folded over and like crossed in the back, and that's two stitches on the side. And I was like, well, I have to like look how this does on like my mannequin. And I went in there and I pinned it, and it looks amazing. That's like directly ripped from like something that already is like currently being sold for like, I don't know, like $1,500.
yeah.
But some of that too, like there's a designer from like the 20s that I'm obsessed with called Fortuny, Mariano Fortuny. And his dresses, because they aren't getting made anymore, go for like tens of thousands of dollars when they come up in auctions. And he pioneered this pleating technique with silk and made these kind of Grecian inspired gowns. And this was like pre 1920s. And it was designed to be gowns that the only thing that changed was the length of them, the height of them, and the rest of it, since the pleating was fine, it could be elasticized and be, kind of conform to a multitude of body shapes.
Mhm.
Um, and lots of people could wear them, and there was drawstring channels so they could change the sleeve shape and the neckline. Um, very adaptable, kind of one size fits all techniques. And I'm obsessed with that idea of like having something that looks sleek, beautiful, chic, but is very liberating for the wearer, because a lot of people can wear this without having to be like, well, that's not my size, that's not going to fit me, because I ran into that a lot when I was first making clothing. I was making it to specific sizes. I was making it um a lot to my size, which can fit up to a certain point, but then, other people can't wear them. And so I started getting really obsessed with drawstring channels and this kind of and pleating fabric or knits to have, a lot more stretch and drape and give, so that a multitude of body shapes can wear this one garment. Because I think, in my mind, that's where things should be going. It's nice to have tailored things that fit you very well. But I feel like, all this general sizing that ends up not really fitting a whole lot of people, I feel like having something that one piece that can be worn a multitude of ways by a multitude of people is like democratizing fashion
Yeah,
to a new
yeah.
degree. And so that's like kind of been my obsession lately, is making garments and things that are pretty adaptable and wearable for a multitude of people and sizes.
Yeah. I love that. That's like, I guess, essentially body positive, like supporting all different kinds of shapes and sizes. And how awesome is that? Because I can imagine, like there are some local artists that, do some, different pieces, and they do all these really cool things. But then like someone like myself, like I can't wear those things because I already know I can look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's too small for me. So I mean, I love it. I love the idea of there being like some artistic, creative, piece out there that I could actually wear. Are you kidding me? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of the idea of it, because one of my really great friends who's also an artist, she's all like, that's her like go-to all the time, is like, oh, that's never gonna fit me, and I'm like, give it a chance, but and just like and like be open to, looking, past kind of the self-consciousness and being able to enjoy fashion like everybody else does. Because I feel like now, especially, people are so used to dressing boring, like wearing, or like, and and feeling like, oh, well, I can't have fun with fashion. That's for like a celebrity or like a red carpet or like someone who's like more fun or something. And
Yeah.
I think it's the best thing in the world to just step into a closet and come out with something completely unique to yourself. That's, because that's what gets noticed. I feel like we should wear clothes for attention more. I feel like we should like wear things so like people can stare at us more, because, I love the attention when I wear something crazy. I don't care like what anybody's thinking, but I also like being noticed.
See, I'm the complete opposite. I'm like, can I just blend into this wall and like look like the wallpaper or something?
Right, right, right. And I used to very much be that way. I wanted to just like kind of be in the background, but that's
It's
just
more
I've
fun,
it's more
probably.
fun to be in the spotlight.
Yeah. I love it. That's so awesome. So you're preparing for like a festival that's coming up?
Yes, me and actually my friend that I just mentioned, her name's Loretta Lynn, and her son Lux and our friend Neil Alexander are all going to be under the artist group titled The Luminaries for Loop Festival in Dothan on April 11th and 12th.
Okay.
Friday and Saturday. It's like Friday night and Saturday during the day. And it's not my first time being in a group, but it's my first time with this group of people, like selling all together as like one collective. But we're all going to be having our different things. Like my friend Loretta, she is essentially an embroidery art. She refers to herself as a fiber artist, but she does a lot of embroidery. She knits. She has been venturing into like painted jackets and wearables as well. Her son Lux is like a digital artist. Our friend Neil is a painter, but he does these like very psychedelic paintings. So it's a good mix, I feel like, styles and personalities. And I love festivals. I love festival settings because one thing that I do that isn't clothing or painting or anything like that related is I also write poetry. And in at a festival setting, I usually will put up my typewriter and have note cards and a dictionary, and I'll get people to give me a word and I'll write a poem for them based off of that word or including that word. And it's by far the thing I've sold the most of. Just the $1 poems, and I'm just like scattered around in the four winds.
Oh my gosh, what a cool idea.
Well, it's not mine originally. It's kind of a thing. It's kind of I don't there's not like as far as I know, because I don't keep in touch with a lot of stuff. There's not like a movement associated with it or anything like that. But I went to New York in November, and outside the Met was just four or five people with little TV trays just typing up poems for people in the
Ooh.
same idea, like give me a word, I'll write a poem, evocative or including that word.
Yeah.
um so it's a really fun way of connecting with someone, and it's really personal, to that one specific, person. um Not saying all of them are great, but
Yeah,
and
that's
some
like
people come
put somebody on the spot.
yeah, and some people have come up to me with like very specific things. Like someone will just ask me to type like just a word, or like all of their like kids' names and stuff like that, and basically just tell me like word like dictate word for word what they want. I'm fine with that. But but it's very stimulating, and it's very energizing. Um
Yeah, I bet. I
yeah.
think it's really cool too that there's I think I know Loretta. I think I've met
You
Loretta at
probably
the
do.
April WCA thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys are just like, okay, I have to understand this group group thing.
Okay, yeah, the coven, yeah.
Because I thought about that too. I thought, man, like a lot of times like booths and festivals can be really expensive, and like
Yeah,
if multiple people could go in and kind of make a collective sort of thing, and then you're all different styles and mediums. How do you do that? Like, are you guys just like you create your own stuff, your own whatever, and then everyone brings it in and you display it? Like, how are
yeah,
y'all?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, that's pretty much it. Yeah, because like I
Okay.
did the first group setting, like tent that I was in was at Kentuck in
That
October.
sounds
I can't
extra fancy. Kids,
Yeah. Kentuck.
we could just say it that way.
And I was with Black Belt Treasures, and they're a nonprofit, and they have like I think over 300 and some odd artists from the Black Belt that they represent in this space that they have in Camden, but they'll go to festivals and they'll bring like five or six of their artists that they want to feature or something with to demonstrate and sell their pieces and stuff. And
Mhm.
I was one of the ones that went with them to Kentucky this year or this past year. And I mean, it was basically that like I had a section where it was my stuff and this jewelry artist from who lives around where I live too. um Her and her daughter had their own little section with their jewelry, and and they had a table set up where they were, you know, shown how they make it. And there was a woman who wove baskets on the end of us, and she was, you know, had a wall of her baskets, and a guy was painting and he had a wall of his paintings. And so it's very cohesive in the sense that like the artist that's in front of this wall or this section, that's their stuff.
Gotcha.
Um and so as long as it's pretty or you know, not like thrown up, you know, and it's all just kind of like haphazard and you know,
Yeah.
you can kind of walk through a lot of these like group tents and figure out like, okay, this one belongs to this person or this one belongs to this person. um I guess the only booth that isn't really like that I've encountered would be, it's my favorite one all the time at Kentucky, and it's the Booker T. Washington Magnet School Kids, and they always do photography. And
Yeah.
so it'll just be like a huge wall of like, or a huge tent really, of just like all these random photographs. And I mean, they'll usually group them, but it's sometimes like theme and feel and, you know, and all of that stuff, which you can kind of get away with, you know, when you've got a lot of photographs or something, because you can mix and match them. But yeah, that's what we've been doing a lot of planning, and that's essentially what we're going to be like. I have my section, Loretta has her section, you know, and we'll all be demonstrating our art in one way, shape, or form. So
Oh,
we're, you know, we're going to have to set that all up. But it's not as like chaotic as it would seem, even though it can feel that way
sure.
when you're like leading up to it.
Yeah. So you've been like, that's so fascinating to me. You're basically creating all of this stuff up into the point when the festival is, right? And you've got to load it all up down there, take it down there, price it. Like, how do you go about planning for something like that? I'm thinking about like other creative people who are wanting to do something similar. Like, what advice would you give? Because it sounds like you've done a couple of these and you've had some experience with it and everything. What advice would you give someone who is doing maybe their own clothing and stuff and selling it?
Don't listen to me. Just like I mean like I'm horrible at planning things. I'm horrible at planning things. I have a very grand imagination and very lackluster execution. But I mean like, you know, I've learned along the way like things to prepare for. I will say this is probably like the most prepared I've been for a festival, because like I have to provide my own tent and weights and you know, so it's like, you know, and festivals are only a section of it. If I was going to tell somebody like about like making clothing and stuff like that,
Yeah.
like what they should do, just do it and be about it, you know, because the worst thing is making something that isn't an expression of who you are, because at some point it's that whole thing of like the garment's wearing you, you're not wearing the garment, you know. You have to, you know, be true to yourself and the things that you like and the things that you want to see on yourself and in the world. Because that's the only thing that matters at the end of the day, is are you happy with what you're doing and what you're wearing and what you see. And also pay attention to to fashion. Just pay attention to fashion. Find the designers and things that you like, and then study that and lean into it, and like, why do I like this? What's speaking to me about these things? Because that's the only way that been able to really get a vocabulary in fashion, in sewing, in all of these things. I'm still learning a lot. Like I still am like not expert at all, but I've learned a lot just by paying attention. you learn, years ago when I first started seriously pursuing this, I would have never thought I would have the level of knowledge that I have now from just paying attention to what people are wearing, what's going on, how things, drape or fold or whatever. Just, pay attention and try new things all the time. All the
Mhm.
time. Do not get comfortable. Always do something different.
Yeah. Oh man, you said a lot of stuff there. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, do you ever have you felt in the past, like have you felt like you I'm just imagining like you're talking about creating things that you want to make. Have you ever been pressured to not do those things, to like do it differently?
Oh yeah. Oh totally. Oh totally. One thing is anytime someone asks me to make a garment for them, I always get like super stressed out because it's a whole different set of expectations and pressures. It's one thing to make something that I, you know, have made just generally because aesthetically I like it, than
Yeah.
making something for someone who has a very specific outcome or silhouette or something in mind. It's been nice because a lot of the dresses and things that it's mostly been dresses that I've made for other people haven't been like technically very difficult at all, but it's just a lot of pressure. It feels like a lot of expectation, because like it's like I've made an elopement dress. I just finished someone's bridesmaid's dress. I'm making a mother of the bride dress here shortly. So it's very like high pressure, I feel like. And there's definitely ones that I've like walked away from because I was like, that's just above my pay grade. I can't do that.
Oh, wow.
So it's always, and it's usually always silk. That's my Achilles heel. Every time I get a commission, just about, it's someone who wants something in silk. And it's the textile I know the least, have worked with the least, and I'm like the most intimidated by because it's
Oh,
so precious and expensive, and there's a million different kinds of it and they all are very different from one another. And so it's a lot. So it puts me into a headspace where ultimately it's very rewarding because I am working outside of what I would normally do, but it feels like taking a test or an exam,
yeah.
like it's really putting like the pedal to the metal and saying like this is how you have to work now, like you have to put all of this that you've been learning to the test now.
Well, how do you know which ones you're going to take and which ones you're not gonna take? Like, what are some of the signs that you're like, "Oh, no, I can't do that. I can't do that."
Well, it depends, short turnaround. No.
Mm.
Like if someone's like, I need a dress in like 2 weeks, I'm not doing that
Yeah.
because that's like it's like I have to push everything aside, dedicate it all to that, have to have the fittings, make sure everything's tweaked out, and perfect. Unless it's just like I literally need a caftan and I'm like, okay, sure, work, I'll do it this afternoon. But like if it's too short of a time notice, if it's too like here's a good example. I'm not going to name names, but a mother of the bride one time approached me asking me to make her dress for the wedding, and she wanted this like silk ball gown,
Mm.
basically. I mean, it wasn't a ball gown, it was kind of like a dancing dress, like a big circle skirt. But she wanted it with like cyanotyped wildflowers on the skirt. And she's like, I know that you've cyanotyped before on fabric and all this stuff. And I'm like, I mean, I have, but like I've never done it on silk, and I especially have never done it to like a garment to like have something cohesive like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it's just so, I'm so prone to like failure with it that like it's like if I mess that up, like that's so much time and money invested into something that like I'm not very confident that I would be able to like get right on the first attempt.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's things like that where it's like it's not that I'm not comfortable with some of these techniques. It's that I don't know if I am the person to put all of them together into something this special, for this moment. But like, um, but then, the ones that I do take on more often than not are for friends of mine. They're for people I know, so I know them very well. I know what they like. I know what looks good on them, what they usually wear, what's comfortable for them, their sizes. And so, it feels more like making, you know, like giving just someone something I would give to them anyway,
Yeah.
Like I made an elopement dress for a good friend of mine,
Mhm.
and I didn't really feel high pressure during any of it, because like
Awesome.
it was just I know her. We talked a lot. It was very easygoing, you know. So it's different. It just depends,
Yeah.
on a lot of factors and how comfortable you are working with other people. That's a
Sure.
huge one. That's a huge one.
Oh man. And like you're creating all these things for like weddings and special occasions. And
Yeah.
everybody knows that's high pressure.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
It's always like I get a commission and they're like, "Hey, I'm going to a wedding," and I was like, "Here we go." It's never can be like, "Oh, I'm just like having a small birthday, I just
yeah.
want like something a little cute." It's always wedding,
Oh,
which
something
yeah,
big.
yeah,
They're like,
and
I want something special. So of course it's gonna be something big.
yeah, of course. And I mean, if you're gonna pull out the silk gown, it better be for, the handmade silk gown, it better be for a wedding, or like a dinner party or something. But yeah, it's always it's either, I'm just making it just because, or I'm making it because like someone's going to an event.
Yeah. So about how much time do you generally need to like create something?
That also is just like it's vastly depending.
Yeah.
I could make like that jean top that's in there right now. It's two
Yeah.
stitches. I can just go in there and go like boop
Oh,
and have it done in like 20 minutes,
wow.
because it's like just two seams. And there's a lot of historical sewing like patterns that I'll pull from that are like one or two seam garments that are just like quick, easy, uses almost all of your fabric. So there's no way everything has a purpose and it's very orderly. But like if it's something for somebody else and it's made out of like fine material and all of this other stuff, I really try to take my time and I really like to finish a lot of stuff by hand, especially on silk. And so that takes a long time with like a full dress. Like the elopement dress that I made, this bridesmaid's dress that I just finished, I took all the raw edges and I just hand
Oh, wow.
finished the edges so that it's just something because it's special and you want that touch to it. And I feel like it just makes something that much more, special in that for that moment because it's got the touch to it. Um and it also helps me with my hand sewing techniques.
Oh, wow. Holy cow. Do you have like, okay, so you're doing the festival thing. Are you doing any other kind of like, have you had any pieces like in a gallery, shops, spaces, and things like that? Tell us about that.
But back in 2022, actually, that was the first time I ever did a show. And it was a solo show. It was a lady in Selma, AC Reeves, was doing a monthly series at her space in a former Woolworths building in downtown Selma. Um, that was like every month an artist would come paint this window out on the front facade and like fill up the gallery space with their art. And I remember she was like, "You can completely take over the space." Like, a friend of mine Ian did exhibition the month before mine, and his was like fully immersive, tapestries, floor to ceiling, pyramids, sculptures, the whole 9 yards. And so I asked her, I was like, could I write on the walls? And she was like, yeah. And so I wrote all of these poems on the walls and like just completely took over mannequins and quilts and paintings
Wow.
everywhere. People could like rip pages from my sketchbooks and buy them for like, $10 a piece if they wanted to. And then outside of that, and so that was like a huge splash like into it. And then since then, I've done a number of like juried art shows. I've been in shows, a lot of shows with my friends like Loretta, and we've done shows together. My just this past year in December was the first time I was in a show in Berlin. I had a doll that was featured in this exhibition of very tiny objects in Berlin, in this small gallery in Berlin, which was amazing for me.
Absolutely.
But I've done I've gotten around quite a bit. I've made the circuit in different circles, and I've been in about, I don't know, like 10 shows now, all very different. Just recently in Tuscaloosa, a friend of mine, Lori Lane, just took down a show that I was in with Loretta and a bunch of our other friends. And it was a politically themed show. So a lot of the stuff dealt with equality or race or current events, politics, all of that. And that's like the first of those kinds of shows that I've participated in. Well, no, I did an IVF art show. I submitted a piece to one of those in Birmingham. So it's like it's all very different, and it's all kind of, people send me calls to artists or gallery exhibition ideas, or like these different shows that are juried and or not juried that you could exhibit in if you wanted to. And it's always been different pieces every single time. Sometimes it's clothes. I'm currently in a show in Selma right now that was juried called Roots and Wings. And the whole idea of it is like Alabama artists that either live here currently or are from here but live somewhere else. And I have like a coat and a quilt and a painting in there. Um and that's just a smattering of
Yeah, yeah.
that. So it's always depending on what I see, what comes into my circle, and what people send to me. But I'm always eager to like jump on an opportunity any
Yeah.
old time. And
Yeah.
like if someone just tells me, hey, I was thinking about doing this, do you want to do it? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it.
That's the way to do it, I think, to like just get involved,
Yeah.
and take those opportunities when they come your way and say yes to things, I think.
Yeah.
Man, that is so cool. And I can't imagine like having the ability to take over an entire space. Like how did you go about like filling up an entire space?
It
Like
was
did you
not hard.
have
It was
everything?
not hard to
Or
do. Yeah.
it
It,
really?
well, I called it 25 a first. I called it 25 a retrospective of the first 25 years.
Yeah.
And it was like I had paintings that I painted when I was a kid in there. I had, all these sketchbooks from middle school and high school and current ones. The all the poems that I scrawled on the walls were from my diary. And all of these different, and like the clothes were things that I've made over the years for different like some of those costumes that I've made or clothes that when I was first starting to get serious into making clothing, embroidered pieces, and all these paintings that I did from back when I was 12 all the way to now. And so it was in collages, and it was everything that was in my house that
Oh,
I didn't have a space for, or had just been like collecting dust. I just took
genius.
out, put out there, and people responded to it because the whole idea of it, I was like, well, I don't have like a theme in any of these things. Like there's things that overlap with each other, but like it's all very, it's all varied. And I was like, well, it's just going to be an explosion of everything that I've done and just kind of opening myself up and letting people take a look, so
Holy
it's
cow.
like I said it was like walking through my brain, and it was a lot like
Oh, that is so cool. Oh my gosh.
um
Oh, I guess let me think. What would be like some of the challenges that you've had as a creative person? And what advice would you give around those kinds of things?
it took me a very long time to believe in myself. Um, a lot of it was growing up wanting to be an artist and everyone around me telling me that that wasn't an option because that's not going to pay the bills and that's not going to do anything for you. You can do that on the side, but you need to take your life seriously. And I realized at some point I was so tied to it that I couldn't just, make it something peripheral.
Yeah.
It had to like be the main thing in my life. And I feel like if anyone is creatively inclined, even though like it may seem pretentious or feel, self-centered or vapid to do so, like take yourself seriously. I mean, like don't take it so seriously that you're like, you know, up your own self, but like just like you have to take seriously the work that you're doing because if you're not, nobody else is going to. And it's again like if you're gonna do it, like be about it. It's like you have to know this thing inside and out because if there's a creative impulse in you, it's wanting to be explored and understood. And the more you explore the world around you, what people are making, what you are and are not responding to, you're honing your own creativity, your own creative voice, and what you value as a creative. It took me a long time. I would always compare myself to other people, other artists. Why can't I do what they're doing? Why can't I, have this kind of success or this kind of output or this kind of vision and skill? And I realized at some point I was focusing so much on what other people were doing and abandoning my own potential.
Mhm.
Um, and if you focus so hard on wanting something that somebody else has, you're never going to appreciate what you have yourself. That's completely unique to, anybody else. And, I blame it on my neuroses, but I mean, if you feel like painting one day and you feel like making shoes the next, just do it. Like, like don't feel like, oh, I have to do this one thing and I have to do this only one thing, Um, because that was another part of it was like, well, if I'm gonna be an artist, I need to be a painter.
Mm.
Um, and that's fine, and I still love painting, but it's not enough.
Mm.
There's things that I feel like I can express in other ways. And,
Yeah.
you should always push your limits and see what other opportunities there are for you in other places and other avenues and other mediums. And so just have fun and, but be grounded in a sense of self. Never lose that sense of self, even if you don't fully know what that is. You'll know it as you go along. You'll
Yeah.
come to know. But
Wow. Holy cow, what a bunch that is like a whole bunch of wisdom right there. Oh my goodness. You
you know
said all the
what?
things. You said all the things, honestly. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's, and I think that's one of the, it's so hard to be a creative person and to express yourself and what is that you want to do and what you want to explore because there's like I don't know, it feels like there's like a lot of rules around it, like how they
Right.
say, like if you're going to be an artist or a painter, then you need to use oils. Okay. And you've
Yeah.
got to do it a certain way. And you've got to, you know, apply to galleries and do these things in this sort of order. And it's, I think it's fascinating because it's so not true in the real world. Like if you're really
Right.
involved in making, then you find that out eventually. You're like, oh, I didn't have to follow those stupid rules anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to a certain degree, I understand why rules exist, and there's obviously processes to things. Like if I'm sewing a seam, like I need to, sew it a certain way every time to make sure that like I have something that's going to stay together.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, when it's like you can only, use this fabric for these applications, that's when I start to think, but what if you used it for something that you're not supposed to use it for?
Yeah.
Like what if I made a pair of pants out of crepe de chine when you're only supposed to make like lingerie out of it? It's like, what if I made, an apron out of, I don't know, like windbreaker fabric, something
Yeah.
that's just like light and like throwaway, even though it's supposed to be for like technical, use and stuff like that. It's something that like, and I guess that's not that crazy when you think about it. Anyway, but it's an example. It's there's all I look at rules as not necessarily limitations, but now, because I used to be like, oh, and if I was especially like working under another artist, I would always like be the first to begrudge having to like conform to their expectations or their processes, and I was very resistant to that. But, you know, I realized that my own process is like reading how something is done and then like deleting half of it. And then like somehow doing it some way that isn't as directed.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that you can do, as I've learned, that are unnecessary in some instances. But you just don't know that until you learn the rules and learn like what's like from point A to point B, what you're supposed to be doing, what you're supposed to be doing. So it's important to like know, but it's not always important to follow them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. That
Yeah.
I think like the most creative stuff comes out of not following. Like maybe
Oh yeah.
knowing, like you said, knowing it and then breaking outside of that, and trying
Right.
something different.
Right. I mean, like one of my favorite designers is Martin Margiela, and it's still being continued even without him. But like sweaters as skirts, 50s ball gowns, again, like split open so they can be worn with like tank tops and jeans. These like taping flowers to your arm when you're wearing something sleeveless to like give it some life. Taking an oversized men's shirt and taping it to look corseted and tailored with like
Yeah.
clear packing tape. It's so like it's just it gives this storyline of like just going around your house, taking the things that you already have and turning them into something completely different
Yeah.
um than what someone would expect. And that's what I love is like taking a boring something that you've seen a million times and just changing it just a little bit even to make it something that like nobody else has and like that people haven't seen before, because all it takes sometimes is
Yeah.
just like tweaking the way something fits, the way something looks, the way it behaves, the way it's applied, and all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh my God," you know?
Yeah.
Um and it's all it takes is just kind of like seeing something beyond its stated function and be,
Yeah.
and beyond the confines in which we expect it to function, you know.
Yeah. I really think that's that little tweak is what will make it unique and sort of stand out and be a little bit.
Oh
It
yeah.
doesn't take much to make it
No.
completely amazing, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like I went to an event recently and I was wearing these like really baggy pants and this kind of loose shirt. And I was like, I just feel like I look like a sack, you know? But I just took some rope and tied it around my waist and all of a sudden I was like, well, that's cute. And that was it, you know? And it's just being like, oh, what do I not like about this? Like troubleshooting and then being like, okay, what do I have around that I can do? Because like I feel like especially now we're so primed to be like, oh, I need to buy this thing that has this one purpose so I can use it for this one intended, and it's just feeding into this like constantly consuming for our very specific purposes and needs, and then we just end up with
Yeah.
more junk where it's like it's way more fun and interesting to take like something like a pair of pantyhose and wear it as a belt, or like cut them off and use them as gloves, like like it because people are going to notice that more than they are just like you wearing pantyhose or like wearing or like wearing a sweater as a sweater instead of as a skirt, it's also about like it feeds into that having fun
Yeah.
with what you're doing and what you're wearing.
I was gonna say, whatever all the stuff that you're talking about and describing right now, it reminds me so much of my son. He loves doing things like that. And like I mean, one of his favorite things is to wear like different kinds of gloves or different kinds of socks, like not like mix matching. And then,
Yeah,
wearing something that isn't supposed to be on his head, you know. And
yeah,
I mean, I've got these pictures of him where he's just like strutting around the neighborhood. And I'm like, holy cow. He's like expressing himself in fashion, and I didn't even realize it. You know, that's
oh yeah, oh
and
yeah.
it's like childlike exploration, like being an adult, but having that imagination and, still exploring using, I guess, like regular things like pantyhose as something else and being
Yeah.
open to that.
Yeah, it's that whole like Picasso quote where it's like it took me my whole life to learn to paint like a child.
Yeah.
It's like it's so important to stay in touch with that inner child
Mm.
and and not just in like, a psychological or like, spiritual sense, but also just like keeping that curiosity alive of like seeing things beyond the mundane and the ordinary and having an eye for what you find interesting. And like wouldn't it be neat if I wore boxers as a head covering? Wouldn't it be neat if I like took this t-shirt and made it into a dress, somehow? It's all about like being open to that like childlike exploration. And that's what I'm after every
Yeah.
time I'm making clothing.
And that's so much more fun, don't you
Oh
think?
yeah.
Like
Oh,
more exciting, more interesting, and I mean, and it's more challenging too, because it's like you're trying to figure it out and you're using your curiosity to come up with something original or that's yours.
right.
And, you're just kind of like bending the rules just a little bit. And man, that's just so much fun.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be able to just explore endlessly that like what you like, what you want to see, you know, and having fun with that. And like because like I love just going into something and saying, you know, I'm going to see if I can do this with, you know, with just no thought whatsoever. Just, you know, I'm going to go in and make a pair of pants from this thing. And I don't know what they're going to look like. And I just kind of feel it out, throw some stitches here and there. And, you know, and I'm always delighted every single time because it's just kind of like we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And it's like it's keeping it fun and lively because if I just made the same five things the same way over and over and over again, I throw my sewing machine out and
Yeah,
I would
that's
never
so
talk to
boring.
anybody ever again.
That's like you might as well have it like a desk job or
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that. It's just like, I totally get it. I completely agree with you. I think like mixing it up and trying different things and being, like almost being like a scientist, like experimenting, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, and then like enjoying the actual process of doing it, that's what makes
Oh
it
yeah.
amazing. That's what
Oh yeah.
makes probably a piece of clothing to be that much more special and amazing, and unique versus like, okay, I went to Target and bought the same shirt that everybody else has.
Right, right. Again, like taking something you already have and just that little tweak, making it something different or something special. Um, like that's all it takes. You know, you don't have to like always go out and like get a new dress. You know, you can take some like stuff out of your closet and turn it into something that looks completely new, like new to you, new to everyone else, you know, and like it doesn't take that. Sometimes like all it takes is like just a pair of scissors. Like, you know, like it doesn't even take getting behind a needle and thread, you know, but you just have to like take that step and like be willing to like see what you want, you know, and really know what you're looking for.
Awesome.
And it makes getting clothes a lot easier because like I can make myself a pair of pants faster than I can order them and get them shipped to me. Well, it's
Okay, so here's the thing. I need you to give classes and teach all of us how to do it, okay? Because I am the person who like orders the stuff.
yeah, right.
So you're like speaking to me right now, and I think you need to like teach and like have, I don't know, like a YouTube channel or something and like let us all know how to do it.
I'd love to if I was at all qualified. I feel like I'm horrible at teaching people to do things, but like
Oh,
maybe it's just like, you know, my process is so chaotic and I'm always just like, just do what you feel. I'm like, I'm, you know, I feel like I'm like the art teacher that just is like, now just follow your voice, you
yeah.
know? But yeah, like I've thought about that, you know, before because I feel like that's only the natural next, like a lot of like fashion houses have been doing stuff like that or have done that in the past. Like Vivienne Westwood did like a zine that
Yeah.
was just like called like DIY. And it was all of these things where she was like, you know, we keep this and that around and here's, you know, some general ideas. She was like talking about how they just keep bolts and bolts of precious fabrics around so that they can just wrap them around themselves, you know, and then that becomes a gown all of a sudden with just some ties and things. Like, you know, a lot of my earliest sewing stuff that I explored was stuff that had like just a hole in it and then you could just wrap it around yourself, you know,
Oh,
and make it
wow.
into something else. Make it into a coat, make it into a dress, make it into a tunic, like whatever. Um you know, and it starts there and then it goes all the way to where it is now.
Yeah.
Um, but as long as you're willing to be patient with me and my sewing machine. I use a 20s like hand crank sewing machine.
Really? Oh my goodness.
It's not like like the electric ones now
Yeah.
where you, like get it done, get it out. But it's a nice process because it helps me to really keep in tune with what I'm doing and slow down and like have a lot of control over everything. There's only so much that can go wrong on it. So it's
Yeah.
not as prone to failure as I usually am.
Well, where can we find your, where can we buy your stuff? Like, how can we get in touch with you if we want something created?
Well, I have like some dolls and clothes and paintings and things. Black Belt Treasures in Camden, Alabama. That's all the way down in Wilcox County. It's well worth your time if you ever find
Excellent.
yourself down there. It's a wonderful place. And you can also go to my friend Betty Anderson's shoe shop museum. She's a very, very amazing lady who also has dolls that are at um Black Belt Treasures. But other than that, my Instagram is at briefcase 1997, all lowercase, briefcase exactly as you would think it is. But people can reach me through there. I've got plenty of people who've reached out to me for commissions or have seen something that they liked that I posted and are like, do you want to sell that? And I'm almost always happy to give something to somebody. So, just that's like the best way to reach me. I know it sucks. I don't have a shop. I don't have a website. I'm so behind with it all. I don't know how to do any of that. I'm like, I need someone to do it for me. That's not me.
Well, I mean, that makes it even more like unique and special that people have to like, you know, there's not, it's just not readily available. You have to like, kind of search to get it. It makes it
Yeah,
that much more special.
I'm very hot now. Like I have something and you like it, you better get it
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
if somebody else sees it, I'm going to sell it to them before you.
Well,
And then
thank
and I may never make it again. So
you. It's one of a kind. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
you
But
so
yeah, that's
much, Casey, for talking to me
thank
today.
you.
This was so
Thank you.
fun. And I
Thank
love
you
what
for
you're doing. I think it's amazing. And I love like, just this like I don't know what the words are like. I want to say interdisciplinary, but like the way that you're just exploring all these different things is so cool.
I call
Um,
it chaotic.
there needs to be a word for that.
Yeah. In a clinical term, it would just be attention deficit disorder. But, I take what I can get.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Casey. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for listening to Art Talk with April. New episodes are out every Tuesday at 6 p.m.